The small town of Ravenbrook was known for its tranquility and warm atmosphere. The Thompson family, consisting of Mark, Lisa, and their 2 children, Emily and Ethan, were looking for a fresh start and a more peaceful life. When they received the news that they had inherited an old house in the inner city, they did not think twice about accepting the opportunity. Excited, the Thompsons moved into the inherited house, located on a secluded street on the outskirts of town. At first, everything seemed perfect. The old residence had a rustic charm and imposing architecture. However, it did not take long for the signs that something sinister inhabited the place to begin to show. As soon as the Thompson family settled into the house, strange phenomena began to occur. During the night, mysterious noises echoed through the hallways, like hissing whispers and dragging footsteps. Objects began to move on their own, falling or changing places without apparent explanation. Lisa, the mother of the family, was the first to notice the shadows that seemed to come alive in the dark corners of the house. She shared her concerns with Mark, but he, trying to maintain an optimistic spirit, attributed these events to mere coincidences or his imagination. Determined to discover the truth behind the frightening events, the Thompsons began to investigate the past of the house and its former residents. They found historical records in the town library, interviewed the elders of the area, and discovered that the house had a dark history. For generations, the old mansion had been the scene of tragedies and unexplained deaths. Rumors of an ancient curse hanging over the property spread through the town. Among the former residents, chilling stories about disappearances, suicides, and supernatural events were shared in fearful whispers. As the Thompsons delved deeper into the secrets of the house, the supernatural forces became more and more terrifying. Shadowy shadows and indistinct figures began to haunt the family both during the day and at night. The sanity of the family members was tested as they found themselves trapped in a nightmare of hauntings. The Thompson family realized that in order to survive, they needed to find a way to break the ancient curse that haunted the house. They consulted experts in paranormal phenomena, studied obscure books, and performed desperate rituals. However, the darkness and evil presence that inhabited the house seemed unshakable. Aware that time was running out, the Thompsons found themselves in a desperate battle for survival. As the house became a veritable battleground, they unraveled the dark secrets that permeated the estate's past. Terrifying discoveries revealed that the former owner of the house, a sinister alchemist, had performed dark rituals in search of power and immortality. The curse was linked to his lust for mastery over forces beyond human knowledge, resulting in a spiral of tragedies that plagued the house and those who dared to inhabit its domains. As night fell over the eerie house, the Thompsons gathered in the main room where the evil alchemist had performed his dark rituals. The room was imbued with an evil energy, with candles flickering and shadows dancing on the walls. Ethan, the youngest son of the family, had been targeted by the alchemist. His innocence and pure energy were desired by the dark being to strengthen his evil power. The family knew they needed to protect him at all costs. In a last effort, the Thompsons sought the forbidden knowledge they found in the ancient records. They discovered an ancient purification ritual that could be the key to breaking the curse. It was risky and required a painful sacrifice, but there was no other choice. As midnight approached, the Thompson family began to perform the ritual in hopes of banishing the evil presence and freeing the house from the curse that had haunted it for generations. Amid invocations, holy symbols, and palpable despair, the darkness intensified. The evil alchemist emerged from the shadows, a grotesque figure wrapped in a black cloak and with glowing eyes full of malice. He cast spells and created terrible illusions to weaken the Thompsons' resolve. They faced their deepest fears and fought the dark forces with all their might. As the climax reached its peak, Lisa, the family's courageous mother, sacrificed herself to protect Ethan. In a gesture of unwavering love, she stood between the alchemist and her son, facing the darkness head-on. Lisa's pure and loving presence unleashed a sacred energy which weakened the evil alchemist. The power of the curse began to be broken, the walls of the house shook, and the dawn light began to seep through the windows. With one last effort, Mark, Emily, and Ethan joined forces and directed the energy of purification toward the alchemist, exposing his weaknesses and undoing his dark form. The darkness dissipated and the alchemist was defeated. By dawn, the house lay in ruins, but the evil presence had been banished. The Thompsons embraced, exhausted but relieved to have survived the battle. The journey to break the curse had been arduous, but they had finally won. Over the next few days, the Thompson family decided to leave the house behind, but not before paying homage to Lisa, who had become a symbol of love and courage. They thanked the old residents of the town who had supported them in their fight against evil. As they walked away from the house, the Thompsons knew that although they had left behind a dark past, they had found a new strength and unity as a family. They would carry with them the lessons learned and the determination to face whatever challenges life presented them. So the Thompson family set out from the quiet town of Ravenbrook, taking with them the memory of the haunted house and the hope for a future free from darkness. The forgotten village of Sombreville was known for its dark stories and macabre legends that had haunted the area for centuries. One of them, however, was particularly intriguing: the legend of the shadow in the mirror. It was said that an old abandoned mansion on the hilltop housed a cursed mirror that revealed the true nature of anyone who looked into it. Those who ventured to look in the mirror were consumed by darkness, their souls imprisoned in an unknown realm. Christopher Morgan, a young writer fascinated by supernatural stories, decided to investigate this legend and turn it into his next masterpiece. He rented a room in a local boarding house and plunged headlong into his research. For weeks he scoured the dusty archives of the town library, interviewed the oldest residents, and explored the grounds surrounding the abandoned mansion. One afternoon, while observing the mansion from afar, Christopher noticed a peculiar detail: a dim light emanated from one of the windows on the second floor. Intrigued, he decided to approach and investigate more closely. He walked through the empty streets until he reached the rusty gate of the mansion. With a racing heart, he pushed it open slowly and entered the courtyard covered with dry leaves. The mansion was in terrible condition, with peeling walls and broken glass. Christopher proceeded cautiously through the gloomy corridors, lighting his way with a flashlight. The air was charged with an oppressive feeling, and every noise echoed through the emptiness of the house. While exploring the second floor, he found a door ajar. Pushing it gently, he entered a dusty room. In the center of the room, an antique mirror reflected the dim light he had seen from outside. Christopher approached cautiously, feeling a chill run down his spine. He looked into the mirror and saw his own reflection, but something was wrong. His eyes seemed darker, lifeless. The expression on his face was one of fear and despair. Heart racing, he tried to pull away, but something pulled him closer. His reflected image began to contort into a dark, distorted figure. Christopher tried to scream, but no sound came out of his throat. He struggled to free himself from the mirror's grip, but his hands went straight through the glass. The darkness enveloped him completely, and his consciousness disappeared. As Christopher was immersed in the darkness of the mirror, his consciousness slowly began to return. He found himself in a strange and desolate place, with an atmosphere charged with melancholy. The feeling of oppression was even stronger than in the abandoned mansion. Christopher realized that he had been dragged into the unknown realm where imprisoned souls suffer eternally. As his eyes grew accustomed to the darkness, Christopher could discern shadowy figures around him. They were figures of people, trapped in this dimension. Their faces expressed despair and agony, and their voices whispered lamentations that echoed in the air. Determined to find a way out and unravel the mystery of the cursed mirror, Christopher began to explore that dark realm. He wandered through desolate landscapes, crossed endless forests, and ventured into dark caves, always in search of clues that would lead him back to reality. While wandering through this haunted place, Christopher found other beings trapped there. Lost souls who, like himself, had fallen victim to the cursed mirror. Together, they shared stories of their experiences and sought solutions to break the cycle of darkness. In time, Christopher discovered that there was an ancient ritual that could break the curse of the mirror. This ritual involved finding 3 powerful objects and combining them in a purification ritual. Determined to free himself and all those who had been imprisoned, Christopher set out in search of these artifacts. During his journey in search of the powerful objects, Christopher found several clues and information that guided him in choosing the right items. He realized that the objects needed to represent key elements for breaking the curse and restoring the light. With determination, he followed through until he found each of the 3 essential objects. The tear of light. Christopher discovered that the first piece needed for the purification ritual was a tear of light. This tear was a rare crystal that contained a pure, radiant essence capable of dispelling darkness. It represented the hope and luminosity needed to combat the shadow of the mirror. The scepter of truth. The second powerful object was the scepter of truth. Christopher discovered that this ancient scepter was imbued with the power to reveal truth and dispel illusions. Representing the search for truth and the ability to confront hidden secrets, the scepter would be instrumental in unraveling the mysteries behind the curse of the mirror. The amulet of liberation. The third and last object needed was the amulet of liberation. This amulet had the power to break chains and free imprisoned souls. It was a symbol of freedom and redemption. Christopher understood that only with this amulet could he undo the bonds that held the souls captive in the dark realm. After finding the 3 objects, Christopher followed the ancestral instructions to perform the purification ritual. In a sacred place in the heart of the dark realm, he positioned the objects in a specific arrangement, forming a triangle of power. Christopher lit candles around the triangle and recited words of invocation that evoked the forces of good and light. As the words left his lips, a bright, intense energy began to emanate from the cursed mirror. The energy enveloped the holy objects and spread through the dark realm, dispelling the darkness and breaking the shackles that held the souls imprisoned. An intense light flooded the dark realm, purifying it completely. The liberated souls found peace and left for their final rest. The cursed mirror, now devoid of its evil influence, reflected only the pure and true image of Christopher, without distortions or shadows. Christopher awoke in his room at the local boarding house. The sun was shining through the window, dispelling any remnants of the gloomy atmosphere that had enveloped him. He had returned to the real world, but the experience would mark him forever. With his heart full of gratitude for having escaped the cruel fate that the cursed mirror had reserved for him, Christopher decided to tell his story to the world. He wrote a moving book, portraying his journey and warning of the dangers of the mansion and the mirror. Christopher's work became a success, and he was recognized as a talented author. However, he never forgot the souls he encountered in the dark realm. Determined to help others avoid the same fate, he used part of the profits from his book to create a foundation that would research and warn about cursed objects and supernatural phenomena. The village of Somberville was never the same again. The legend of the shadow in the mirror still persisted, but now, thanks to Christopher, people were more aware of the dangers it posed. The abandoned mansion became a place of warning and respect, and those who ventured there did so with caution. Christopher Morgan's story became known as a tale of courage, overcoming, and redemption. His name has remained associated with the legend of the shadow in the mirror, not only as a victim, but as someone who brought hope and light to a world dominated by darkness. It was a dark and stormy night, with the moon hidden by the heavy clouds that gathered over the small isolated village. The winds howled ominously through the trees, uprooting branches and scattering dry leaves over the deserted streets. The windows of the houses were tightly shut, while the residents, locked in their homes, tried to muffle the frightening noise that echoed from outside. Against this terrifying backdrop was an abandoned mansion at the top of the hill. Its decaying facade, blackened by the passage of time, seemed to whisper dark secrets to anyone who dared to approach. The story goes that the house had long been inhabited by a mysterious family who disappeared under unexplained circumstances, leaving behind only legends and unrest. The villagers avoided the place as if they were cursed, because they believed that something evil still haunted those silent halls. The nightly murmurs of the winds seemed to turn into ghostly voices, whispering the dark secrets that the mansion held. On that particular night, a brave explorer decided to unravel the mysteries surrounding the abandoned mansion. Drawn by curiosity and driven by a desire to challenge the unknown, he climbed the steep hill, braving the hostile elements and the chilling stories that echoed in his mind. As he approached the main entrance, he felt an unseen presence watching him, as if the fiery eyes of evil were seared into his soul. The sound of whispering footsteps followed him, even when no one was around. His breathing quickened, mixing with the frantic rhythm of his heart, as he crossed the threshold and plunged into the terrifying darkness of the abandoned mansion. After the explorer enters the abandoned mansion, the environment around him begins to change in subtle and disturbing ways. The shadows seem to extend beyond what is natural, the walls seem to pulse, and the hallways become a confusing maze. Sounds become distorted, echoing in distant voices and sinister laughter. As the explorer progresses through the rooms of the mansion, he encounters doors that lead to unexpected places and passages that seem to move, disorienting his spatial perception. The furniture takes on grotesque and disfigured forms, while portraits on the walls seem to follow him with blank eyes and macabre smiles. As the explorer tries to find a way out, he finds himself trapped in a cruel game of illusions and distorted reality. The walls become impenetrable walls, the corridors stretch endlessly before him, and voices whisper in his ear, confusing his mind. The protagonist begins to doubt his own sanity. He questions whether everything he is experiencing is real or just a figment of his tormented imagination. The boundaries between the physical world and the supernatural world become increasingly blurred, and the explorer feels entangled in a web of nightmares. As he struggles to free himself from this spiral of confusion and horror, the explorer is confronted with haunting visions of his past and traumatic events. Distorted memories emerge from the depths of his mind, merging with the distorted realities of the mansion. The game of illusions intensifies as the explorer is confronted by distorted versions of himself, reflecting his deepest weaknesses and fears. He must confront his inner demons and find a way out of this hellish labyrinth before he is consumed by insanity. The line between what is real and what is illusion continues to blur as the explorer dives deeper into the dark secrets of the mansion. The end of the tale holds a surprising twist, revealing the truth behind the illusions and confronting the protagonist with a terrible choice. The explorer finally arrives in a central room of the mansion, where he comes upon an ancient altar. Black candles burn around it, casting dancing shadows on the decrepit walls. An evil presence makes itself felt, making the protagonist uneasy and anxious. As the explorer watches the altar, a voice whispers in his ear, promising riches and power beyond his imagination if he submits to this dark force. Tempted by the prospect of a completely transformed life, the explorer is faced with a terrible choice. The explorer realizes that the evil entity inhabiting the mansion is, in fact, a being thirsting for human sacrifices. The altar is the gateway to his domain, and the voice that promised greatness was only a ploy to lure victims. With renewed courage, the explorer decides to confront the entity and protect his own life. He struggles against the temptations and incantations cast by the evil force, resisting its control. The surrounding environment becomes increasingly hostile and distorted, with terrifying shadows and terrifying voices echoing through the room. With great difficulty, he manages to leave this room, where the effects of the evil diminish somewhat. Being able to think clearly, he sets off through the mansion looking for a way to get rid of the evil. The explorer finds an old diary hidden in one of the rooms. In the yellowed pages, he discovers references to a powerful object capable of confronting the evil entity haunting the mansion. The diary mentions enigmatic clues and symbols that lead to the location of the holy relic. Determined to put an end to the terror afflicting the mansion, the explorer embarks on an intense and dangerous quest into the darkest corners of the manor. He follows the clues found in the diary, facing challenges and dangers along the way. After an arduous journey, the explorer manages to overcome several traps cunningly laid throughout the manor. He comes face to face with dark and grotesque creatures who fiercely guard the path to the holy relic. These abominations, created by the evil entity itself, test the explorer's determination and courage. Every step is a battle against these terrible creatures. The explorer wields his weapon deftly, delivering precise blows to defend himself. The air is charged with tension and danger as the creature's claws and fangs threaten to tear at his skin. After facing these supernatural threats, the explorer enters a secret chamber hidden amidst the oppressive shadows of the mansion. The room is permeated by a dense and mysterious atmosphere. As the light from the explorer's lantern illuminates the space, the glow is reflected in an ornate pedestal that stands out in the center of the room. On the pedestal rests the sacred relic, a mystical artifact of transcendent beauty. It is a piece of rare preciousness, carved from unknown materials, which seem to emit a soft, golden light. The explorer feels a magnetic attraction to the relic, while its sacred energy radiates a sense of peace and power. The artifact is richly decorated, with intricate carvings that tell an ancient story. Sacred symbols and enigmatic inscriptions adorn its surface, revealing its importance and purpose in the fight against the forces of darkness. As the explorer holds the sacred relic in his hands, he feels a comforting warmth and a sense of renewed purpose. He understands that this artifact is the key to confronting the evil entity that terrorizes the mansion. It is a symbol of hope and power, granting him the courage he needs to confront evil head-on. Amid the solemn silence of the room, the explorer absorbs the sacred energy emanating from the relic, feeling strengthened for the final battle. Returning to the central room of the mansion, with determination, the explorer grasps the relic and holds it firmly. The moment he grasps it, a bright light is activated, enveloping the room and weakening the evil presence. The mansion shakes and crumbles as the entity is consumed by its own darkness. Amidst the impending destruction, the explorer manages to escape the ruined mansion, running through the burning corridors as the terror slowly fades. He emerges from the manor wounded but triumphant, contemplating the dawn that brings with it a new beginning, free of the evil that plagued the mansion.